scope and variety of films available, discussing favorites is a long-loved pastime of film fans worldwide. If you ask 100 different film fans for a top 10 list, it's almost certain that you'll receive 100 unique lists, with an extremely small minority of films possibly crossing over from list to list. Before I got too deep into my harebrained schemes and random observations, I thought that it may be beneficial to give everyone a solid understanding of where I'm coming from in terms of what movies motivate me and bring me joy. This list may end up being something that I revisit on occasion, as film tastes tend to grow and change the same way that us film fans do. Prior to jumping into the Big Ten, however, I must make room for a few honorable mentions, films and notes, and other caveats. At some point, I will make a favorite director's list. And spoiler alert, Stanley Kubrick will more than likely sit at the top of that list. None of his films, however, made my top 10, which I find quite odd myself. Other standout directors like Quentin Tarantino, Francis Ford Coppola, Billy Wilder, the Coen brothers, and more are absent from the list, but that doesn't make me any less of a fan of their work. While there are some strong actresses listed in the films that follow, there is a noticeable lack of female directors on the list. That is no slight, once again, to any particular director, but in making these highly personal lists, some tough choices must be made. There are almost certainly some classic films, cult films, and underground films many would expect to be on my list, but with 10 being such a limited number, there were times that I had to sacrifice cool points for honesty. Some horror fans will probably notice the lack of that genre on the list as well. My experience with horror has fluctuated in the same manner that the genre of horror has mutated over the years, but with suspense and thriller aspects of horror finding their way into the zeitgeist over gore and shock, I'm rediscovering my love for that genre. But enough with the preambles, the excuses, and the preparatory talk. I know what it is everyone came here for. So, without further ado, here are DOOMonFILM's current top 10 movies. Number 10, Punch Drunk Love, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, 2002. From the moment that I saw Boogie Nights, I knew that Paul Thomas Anderson was destined to be one of my favorite directors. Magnolia truly blew me away, but it wasn't until Punch Drunk Love that I realized we were dealing with a true master of his craft. Maybe it was the ability to take a ridiculous actor like Adam Sandler and turn him into a heavily dramatic lead in the form of Barry Egan. Or maybe it was the way he slowly introduced us to Emily Watson's character, Lena Leonard. Maybe it was the John Bryan score that mixed a rich tapestry of tones, sounds, instruments, and samples. Perhaps it was even the abstract art of Jeremy Blake that separates the story into chapters. Or maybe it was the oddness of the story itself. Whatever element it may have been, or combination thereof, I do know that from my first experience with this film to my most recent viewings, I leave it with a renewed belief in the concept of love. For all of the offbeat love stories our generation has been blessed with, this one is still my favorite. Number 9, Akira, director Katsuhiro Otomo, 1988. Akira wasn't the first anime I encountered, but it was the first one that opened my eyes to the limitless possibilities of the genre. The story presented is so complex and rich that it took me many years to really appreciate it, not to mention the nuance of the animation, the richness of the backgrounds, and the high quality of the voiceover performances. The character arc that Tetsuo goes through is truly epic, and the animation styles used to convey as many shades of mental unrest still stand out in my mind to this day. When the remastered version came along, I found new amazement in the soundtrack through the realization that I never heard the choral arrangements and unique vocal performances intertwined into the futuristic sounds. Whenever I'm asked to recommend an introduction point for someone curious about anime, it's almost always Akira. Number 8, Un film est un film, director Jean-Luc Godard, 1961. Italian neorealism and surrealism may have been my introduction to the bigger world of film, but it was French New Wave that expanded my way of thinking about and seeing film. Francois Truffaut may have been the father of the movement, but for my money's worth, nobody made New Wave movies like Jean-Luc Godard. From his colorful visions, to his playful camera, to his childish sense of humor, to his love of movies, it's hard to mix as many ingredients as Godard did, and when he mixed together the ingredients for Un Film est un Film, the dish came out perfect. Like many before me, I fell in love with Anna Karina, and my bar for romantic films was forever raised. Number 7. Natural Born Killers, director Oliver Stone, 1994. There was a time where I knew I was a fan of movies, but like many young and naive men, I thought I'd seen it all. 15-year-old me had no idea that a movie could be a spiritual experience, a drug trip, a deep examination of unconditional love, and a damning condemnation of modern media all at once. Then 15-year-old me rented Natural Born Killers, and the line in the sand was drawn. If your movie wasn't as interesting or as visually stimulating as something made by Oliver Stone, it was getting kicked down the queue at that point. In all likelihood, it was probably a combination of my age and the change in times that made Natural Born Killers my favorite problematic movie at that point. But as the years pass by, this film only gets better and more prophetic. Number 6. Network, director Sidney Lumet, 1976. The reputation of some films precedes them, and in the case of Network, I went into it somewhat familiar with the iconic "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore" moment. To my complete pleasure, I learned that this moment was just one of many, many iconic moments in a nearly perfect film. Every performance beat, every line read, every monologue, and every argument leaps off the screen, and the vision of television that was laid out as a dark satire seems more like documentary footage at this point. Just beneath the fantastic surface, some deep truths about the motivations of our media and the interests that fuel them lurk like sharks in dangerous waters. If you've ever enjoyed anything penned by Aaron Sorkin, you owe it to yourself to give Network a go. Number 5. Do the Right Thing, directed by Spike Lee, 1989. My dad was never the biggest movie aficionado, so sitting down to watch films with him was a rare occurrence. That's what made the one time he did sit me down to specifically watch and talk about a movie so special. And that movie was Spike Lee's landmark look at race-based social interactions, Do the Right Thing. The colorful Bed-Stuy neighborhood, fashionable clothes and shoes, and the larger-than-life personalities immediately hooked me. The style and confidence that Spike Lee directed with held me and pulled me in deeper. When all hell broke loose in the shocking climax, I was floored, and in the story's resolution, I was able to find hope and a sense of direction in regards to my personal navigation of these interactions that take place in the real world. Of all the films on this list, none come close to having the direct impact and relatable nature that my experience as a black man that Do the Right Thing has. Number 4. Midnight Cowboy, directed by John Schlesinger, 1969. If Natural Born Killers was the movie that opened my young mind to the expanded possibilities of how a film could be edited and presented, then my discovery of Midnight Cowboy was a validation that this vivid use of style was not a new thing. It was the first Dustin Hoffman film that I saw that made me really and truly understand how magnetic his performances could be. And it was the first time I was able to see the family resemblance between Jon Voight and Angelina Jolie. It put the whole existence of Rizzo the Rat, one of my favorite Muppet Show creations, into a completely new light. Learning the story of how the film garnered an X rating and still managed to clean up during award season was truly awe-inspiring. Even talking about this film with a former boss of mine made me realize that elements of the story could be nuanced, but obviously present to one person, and completely go over the head of another person. Specifically, the ambiguity of the relationship between Joe Buck and Ratso Rizzo caused a tense debate about the way homosexuality is viewed by men, particularly alpha males, and upon learning that John Schlesinger's personal life and journey of coming out as a gay man, I felt validated with my interpretation. Midnight Cowboy was certainly ahead of its time in many aspects, and is equally impactful today as it surely was nearly 50 years ago when it was released. Number 3, 8½, directed by Federico Fellini, 1963. It took me into my college years to discover what many stateside movie lovers scornfully refer to as foreign films. Like so many before me, I scoffed at black and white film and didn't have the patience for subtitles. One day, while perusing my local video store shelves, I came across a foreign film section, and the first thing I saw was 8½. It looked intriguing, so I rented it and was immediately struck by the open scene, as it reminded me of the movie Falling Down. Later, a dance scene reminded me of Pulp Fiction, and I started to realize there were many moments that reminded me of films I'd seen before. The story had me lost, and after repeat viewings, I realized that I was watching a movie about a director with writer's block and crippling self-doubt who was struggling to write the movie that you were currently watching. The way that different levels of reality were folding in upon themselves blew my mind, and it changed the way that I looked at film forever, which made my discovery of 8½a personal watershed moment and cemented its place on my Mount Rushmore of films. Number 2, Taxi Driver, directed by Martin Scorsese, 1971. Many equate film to other mediums, and one of the best comparisons that I've heard is that film is visual poetry. When viewed under this lens, Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver is one of the most mesmerizing, shocking, and intriguing poems ever committed to the screen. Released during a period of disillusionment in American culture that fit squarely between the free love of the 1960s and the excess consumerism of the 1980s, Taxi Driver is a powerful and polarizing snapshot of a man not made for his times, struggling with all of his might to not let the weight of this reality crush him or change him for the worse. There are no heroes in this movie, and there are no innocents. There are only varying levels of people using people, all set among the backdrop of a city that eats citizens who aren't savvy or cunning enough to survive. Bernard Herrmann takes the experience to 11 with his hypnotic score, and Scorsese's vivid camera connects us deeply to the depressing and taxing existence of Travis Bickle. This movie is not for everyone, but for those willing to experience it, the impression it leaves will more than likely last forever. Number 1, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, directed by Robert Zemeckis, 1988. It's hard to put into words the enjoyment and fascination that Who Framed Roger Rabbit still brings me to this day. When it was initially released, it was one of the most stirring theatrical experiences I'd ever had. My long history and familiarity with animated shows from Disney, Warner Brothers, Max Fleischer, King Feature Syndicate, Universal Pictures, Felix the Cat Productions, and Turner Entertainment meant that every cameo, no matter how brief, was a shot of instant nostalgia. As a burgeoning film fan, the story drew me in, and years later, I found it as a suitable primer for films like Chinatown. Most importantly, the technical achievement of seamlessly blending live action and animation without being limited to a fixed camera was wholly and completely mind-blowing. What makes this film my absolute favorite is that, over the years, each of these previously mentioned aspects have only brought more and more rewarded experiences with repeat viewings. There's never been a film quite like this one, no matter what people will say about Mary Poppins, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Cool World, or any other hybrid of the two mediums. And I doubt there will ever be one quite like it to come. As a matter of fact, I don't think a paragraph's worth of talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit is going to do it. So in my next video, I'm going to go into depth about what truly makes Who Framed Roger Rabbit special. In the meantime, for those that are still hanging around the channel, thank you. I know it's been a long break. I've been doing a lot on the music side and working on a collaboration with Big Black Guy Reviews. We just actually dropped our Bustin' Loose review recently. You should definitely go check that out because it's super duper funny. But yeah, thank you for checking out Doom on Film. I have much more coming in the future, so if you like the video, leave a like, leave a comment, and let me know which one of these movies you really enjoy, what you'd put in your top 10, all that good stuff, you know. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that little bell if you want, and thank you very much for tuning in to Doom on Film. Take care.